So welcome to another episode. I think this one is something not totally new, but something I'm passionately and eager to learn more, to discover more. Um, Interesting profile, interesting person, a dear friend. Most importantly, in the space of digital space, in the space of art, before digital art was somehow became kind of a trend, especially with the initiation of NFTs and the blockchain and so on. So let me welcome Vesa directly. Vesa, welcome to DX Talks, to our platform. As I mentioned before, you're just not just an artist, you're a dear friend also. So I really happy to welcome you on this, and then for you taking part in this space.
Super to hang out with you, Rudy, again. I mean, we've been friends for a long time and hung out with cigars and talked a whole bunch offline. And it's finally a great pleasure to be with you to start discussing whatever it is that would be inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. That's the idea of our talk today, at least. That's what I want to try to get out of you. I'm going to milk you to the last bit. First, can you introduce yourself so that they know who is Vesa from your side? And then I'll do my own stuff also later on as we move in.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I've been a professional creative my whole life. I've been, I got educated as a filmmaker, as a film director, but before then I played in a bunch of bands, and that was music was my first passion. But then about 15 years ago, I got this idea that what if I started body painting on people and photographing that process and photographing in nature, painting and photographing those paintings, and then putting it all together with Photoshop, then might I have something new? And that's kind of, then all of a sudden I realized that this is something entirely new, and it was a new direction. And I then had a production company, and all of a sudden my heart was in a new thing, as opposed to filmmaking, even though of course those skills turned out to be immensely valuable, and I never would have invented this new form of how to make art without them. It's been a crazy journey, kind of tumbling forwards always, and with NFTs, ultimately, I think all of those different skills kind of came full circle, that I now get to do a bunch of interesting things that don't have a previous format. Like it's not exactly a music video, it's not a traditional painting, it's all of these things coming together in a fun way. And it's a continuous adventure. That's what's the best of it. It doesn't matter what keeps being inspiring, and it can be somehow added to the mix. And that's the gist of it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how you take it. You're a multi-award winner. In the same time, you're a digital pioneer in the space, and then we'll know why you're a digital pioneer because you've been there, innovating almost 2 decades in the digital space, as you mentioned. What's your take on art and the transformation that it went throughout those almost 2 decades? I don't want to make you older.
No, I don't mind. But just whatever. I'm 45, and I'm very comfortably 45, apart from the body kind of not being as kind of
I
coherently
discovered this
together.
yesterday that you're same age as me. So
Oh, really? Oh, nice. Yeah, no, I actually mentally, I wouldn't go back a single year, because it's been the great thing about getting a little bit older is that some things do become a lot more clear and comfortable in some senses of who I am, and the picture of the world and what life is about is becoming increasingly higher resolution. And all those things that were a benefit when I was much younger, the price was that so many things were muddy and unclear, and the relationship to self was different. So I suppose that's one part of the journey of being an artist and a human being, is that you get more clear about things, and then you get to make contributions that also are beneficial to other people. But sorry, I lost my thread. What was the question again?
so you've been there for 20 years. You witnessed it all. What's the
Oh yeah.
transformation that has happened in this space? And then we
Yeah.
add we can add to our age this whole problem of forgetting
for where we are, why, who
Yeah.
are you, what's going on. uh, no, it's I would say when I first started, and especially in the art thing, they didn't really know the traditional art world or what to do with me, because my originals were digital files already back then. So from their point of view, I was selling copies because I had to make a physical representation of them. And then when they asked, where's your all original, I had to say I don't have any. So the attitude was that, okay, we don't know how to really sell you that, we like the expression and the things and the whatever, and it's fascinating, but commercially it was very, very difficult. So when crypto art came along, this was in 2017 for me. There was only a handful of us who were doing, especially I would say in the fine art quality kind of way, doing art about crypto and why Bitcoin was important, what decentralization was all about. Then that led to NFTs very quickly, and that it was so many multifold interesting because it was a positive direction for money. It was digital rights for the first time uh, in the world. Those started emerging. I started to realize that back then my about 300 digital originals were soon to have very different kind of value as to what they would have had before. And that transformation is still very much ongoing, because if you look at the legacy art world, for the most part, they will look at NFTs as something that is just garbage and hoaxes and many other things. They don't really understand it, and they don't, for the most part, want to be a part of it, even though many now amazing galleries have joined the space, and Christie's and Sotheby's and all that kind of stuff. It's breaking that ground, but many traditional artists avoid it because they don't understand it, and what they've seen thus far being sold for millions and millions of dollars don't make any sense to them whatsoever. And then you have the NFT world that gets the digital ownership rights, gets where the metaverse is going, what AI is going to be doing, and how the creative space is evolving. But they're not very often yet kind of working to hand in hand in parallel. There's attempts at so, but I'm answering this way because you said that how have you seen it transform, and I'm just constantly seeing it in these big transformations, and it hasn't exactly yet transformed, especially if you look at the legacy art world, into this new thing of what is now possible. And it's very understandable why it hasn't, because with NFTs, for example, you would, in order to fully get it, you would have to understand some things about what might be the issues with the legacy finance world. What are the problems that Bitcoin solves? How does this technology work so that digital land ownership rights are actually a real thing? What is this decentralization? And then some of the artworks themselves that were the early coming into the scene, they were thematically about this whole world. So if you don't know really anything about it, that would have gone over your head a little bit. Then there were some quality issues. There's a multitude of different things that are in the mix that kind of have to a little bit click before it makes sense for you to take the leap to really start exploring this. And luckily there's so many people who are now curious, and the first run of NFTs was great because all of a sudden a bunch of people made a whole lot of money, and that of course piqued many
That's what I
many
wanted
people's
to ask you. Is
interest.
it luckily?
I think every new thing goes through a hype cycle. I mean, like, referring to age, I mean, I was there for I was in 19 or something like that when the first internet bubble came along, and all of those internet giants kind of rose and destroyed themselves and whatever, and it was very similar when crypto came along, and all of a sudden you have this new realm, and then the metaverse, and all of these words are now kind of ruined, from NFTs to metaverse to now AI is now in the hype cycle. I don't know where, but soon that'll not be as investable in the hype way as it is. I just keep looking at the technology, and I think the metaverse or spatial web is very, very interesting. NFTs are an absolutely necessary technology for us to progress to where we're going. We will certainly need AI, and the kind of the combination of these, all of these fields are benefiting from one another, and that's why I'm kind of tipping my toes into all of them little bit by little, as they develop and become more helpful.
uh, I think we're witnessing everything as we speak, how they are advancing, how they are being created, how they are abused, how there are opportunities also. This is beautiful. You became interested in incorporating blockchain and NFT into your art from 2017. And did this influence also your creative process, or was it just like, well, it's a new medium, no, let me add it and then I move on? Or no, you had to create something totally different for that?
But, well, when I first got what Bitcoin was and what the decentralization movement was about, I mean, I went for a coffee with a friend of mine who just told me where Bitcoin was, and he started sending me links
An
like to
evangelist.
and he sent me things of Andreas Antonopoulos, some of his speeches,
Yeah.
and then I got acquainted with the Bad Crypto podcast guys and their podcast, and I just started absorbing all of this information of what was going on. So to begin with, what I did is that I made new artworks thematically about what I thought was important to understand as I started to understand it myself about the decentralization movement. So the expression changed drastically from what it was from before, trying to get this new thing, as well as then I mean, I used a service like Verisart, which is on the Bitcoin blockchain. You can you have a picture, and then you put all the data of back then it was physical pieces that I was verifying on Verisite, and I still do. And I thought, okay, this is cool because it's on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's the most durable. The hash is going to be there for a while. It's great because it's using that technology to verify the artwork that is about the technology, and so forth. So yeah, it did change a lot, but now I'm going back to my roots again with this new series called The Senses, where I collaborate with models and actresses and circus acts and all different kinds of things, and we're shooting their life stories and what they're inspired by onto a video and stills format, and then I paint again and make these things. We haven't still yet managed to put together even the first of the video formatted ones of these, but it's something that is. I wouldn't see how this would have made any sense for me to work in the traditional art world, because it's quite quirky, but it's not quirky enough to really fit into the earlier mold of video works in the gallery traditional realm. Uh, these only make sense because NFTs are a thing for me to do now, and I get to make physical representations, then use augmented reality on those things when the thing gets animated, or then the large screens or large spaces where they get blown up as artworks, and then you get to own them. It's without the evolution of NFTs, I doubt that I would be making many of the projects that I'm now doing. I probably wouldn't be an artist anymore, to be honest with you, if the crypto evolution wouldn't have happened. Because it was a
Yeah.
miserable time for me to try to make a living for a decade before this started becoming a thing. Honestly, it was awful.
Yeah, and you're a pioneer yourself in this, and I'm not gonna say the only one I know, but you're a leading figure in this space, especially on the assets tokenization with an art twist. Okay, and when I talk about asset tokenization, maybe you are even unique in what you're doing, and I've seen your examples similar to the cars. Tell us more, because I'm gonna try to get a car also displayed now. But meanwhile, what's your take on that thing that you've created also?
Well, I think it started, like I said, that it was difficult for me to make a living to begin with, and because I had these large resolution digital artworks, and I had to figure out different ways and how to monetize them. I didn't only think of surfaces like a canvas or a printed canvas. I started thinking about putting this artwork on cars from something like 2014. I think I made the first mock-up, which I showed to Dr. Marwan when I first met him, and this led to our art car project. But I thought of these things for a long time before digital art now started becoming a thing through NFTs, much more in the mainstream. And it's a very, because if you look at something like Renaissance Italy, it was innovation in the monetary sense, and then the Medici family started funding the best artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci, and those who would then uh, then inspire society. And now we still go back after centuries to look and marvel at all the different kinds of things of what they were able to achieve in Italy. And in Italy, most importantly, art belongs to everyone. It belongs to the whole of the nation, and from the peasant to the king, so to speak. It's part of their DNA and heritage, which it isn't in a similar sense almost anywhere else in the world. And that Renaissance part was inspiring to me, where I felt like a lot of the art world had kind of isolated itself into its own bubble and its own rules, and all of a sudden you have a weird banana on the wall and that goes for $120,000, and the general
Yeah.
public's going like, what in the, you know. And there's some things and how that can make sense ultimately, and I don't think those are super positive. But I wanted to look at the whole world as a canvas. If it can be a car, what else can it be? And that question has led me to some very, very interesting places. And I'm not going to even kind of talk about them publicly yet, because it's also an industry where people like good ideas and they don't necessarily credit you when they just take them. So there's some things that I have made pretty public, is that we're negotiating with a jet company, and we're thinking about villas and these kinds of things, and we have some now very interesting people who are coming into the mix for us to do the cars with. But so at its core, one thing is how to make the world more beautiful. How can art become a larger part of our lives? As you well know, that when you go on Twitter these days or wherever, you'll see a lot of ugliness between people, and the world is polarizing. People are not exactly being more nice to one another, violence, all kinds of eruptions. Some say that we're already kind of in the Third World War, and it's the pockets are just inflating in different places. So we're living in a very volatile time in many different ways. And whatever humble contribution that I could have on that side to bring more beauty to the world is an underlying major value for me. And this goes not only at the surface level, is how can we behave better, or how can we be more loving to ourselves and other people and whatever. So it's layered like this. So that's one aspect of it. Then the second aspect, that might be the more financial layer, is that this Tesla that you just flashed on the screen, is that what happens when you buy a digital artwork, and let's say that artwork is on your wall, and then it can be applied to your car and different kinds of things. The artwork itself does become a part of your personality. That's one aspect, because anywhere where Dr. Marwan goes with that Tesla and it's parked somewhere, everyone then knows pretty much in Dubai in Web3 that, okay, Marwan is here. So that's one aspect. And then thirdly, what's really interesting that would be the fact that it's a used Tesla from 2017. So right now, if he just goes and resells the car, it's probably a $25,000, $30,000
Maybe
car.
less. Maybe
Yeah.
less.
I wouldn't know, but somewhere approximately that. But if the artwork is applied, you're the owner of the artwork and you're owner of the Tesla, and it's registered now as a full-blown street legal art car in Dubai, because it's through Dr. Marwan this is possible, and no one else pretty much understands how to do it. This is one aspect: the registration of the car, the artwork itself, and how it's delivered to the thing, and how we're going to sell it in the springtime. So what happens to essentially a liability through this artistic process is that it becomes an asset. And that's quite a
A value by
revolutionary idea.
itself. A value by itself.
Yeah. So there's many different ways in how you get to start playing with what is value, what are the artwork rules, or let's say art world rules of what you can apply to different sectors and experiences in order for value to increase, or the perception of what it is that you're interacting with. And then of course you have the digital museums, you have virtual reality coming. You can, like, out of this Tesla, we've already made a digital version of that, and we were thinking about making a game where those who buy the physical assets, or let's say they've bought the NFT and then they've bought the IP in different increments, then they get to also maybe race these cars in the metaverse. There's so many different applications that are now possible to do with this. So essentially, this is what my company is going to be doing. Vesa Digital is that you could look at it as an art luxury IP company that's then kind of does these many transformational things, and hopefully what that will result in is increased value to anyone's life who participates on some level.
Very interesting. I'm not sure if your company is an IP or you have become the IP itself. So this is where it's intertwined all together to come up with this. Uh, yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned this. And then Hertz recently they auctioned cars, $19,000 and $20,000 in the US, because they could not maintain the financial aspect of them, and knowing that depreciation of those cars. So adding that NFT value, I'm sure not just it will maintain not the original value, but at least some quite of an asset value for it. You know, I came across most of your pictures, whatever is available, but significance, in that space didn't register with me until today when I learned that Veena Malik, which is a renowned Bollywood actress, was, or actually gave you her blessing to create landscape directly on her body. And this was, I think, maybe pre-digital NFTs, if I'm not mistaken. But that gave you a big, if you want to call it, a push also in the space of art, if I'm not mistaken. So, what's your take on how the dealing with her allowed you maybe to express even more or realize your art, and then especially knowing that you don't take art normally, it's a different type. It is art, but it's a different type of mediums.
Well, with Veena, that was a quite the premise, because she's Pakistani and she's Muslim, and she was known by millions and millions of people, and she had plenty of controversy in her career before. And I just got in touch with her, and we started discussing of what it is that we could do. The articles, some of them which were written that I was doing some landscapes or something like that on her body, were entirely erroneous. Had nothing to do with landscapes. What we're doing, what we really were exploring, was that in 2012, when we met, there were some really interesting things that were happening, because for example, the Mayan calendar, the Mayan prophecy of 2012 was
Ah,
coming to
yes.
its fruition, or conclusion, however you want to see it. And then the world was polarizing. You could already see then that, we're not becoming more coherently under one story. We're just fragmenting and fragmenting further with our different sort of identity structures. And it was something that felt to me that isn't going to be necessarily a thing that will increase the mental health of the planet. So what I wanted to do with her, and what I proposed, is that we should, in these artworks which we made back then, we should explore what is similar between men and women, what is similar between Pakistan and Finland, what is similar between the major religions of the world. What is the uniting grand story between humans that actually allows for us to talk amicably, or anyone in the world, no matter what your form is? Do we have enough in common so that we can all discuss with one another and find the common thread, so that we find the united brotherhood or sisterhood across all of these different kinds of lines that we have? And it was very complicated, because in my process, it's nude body painting. So you are nude, and then you have the body paint that comes on top, and of course it's like a superhero suit, but still, in particular, from the process perspective from Islam, that would be quite a controversial thing to do, is to body paint a Pakistani Muslim actress. So it took me a long time. This was out of the process, was probably a year and a half, was me studying and learning how it is that this would be even possible to make in such a way that it's not just seen as disrespectful, or something that is just pouring petrol on a fire that is already
Yeah.
inflamed. So I spent a considerable amount of time thinking, studying humbly, and then trying to learn on what the proper angles are, and how to present these stories in such a way that it would actually be helpful, and it wouldn't be further polarizing, but it would be actually uniting. And
Very
I do
interesting.
believe that we managed it, because in those artworks, for example, there's one called "The Beginning of a New Era," and it was in this one, Vina is whispering onto the ear of an elephant, kind of Ganesh, that the new era has begun. And then on the right side of that artwork, you have the Aztec calendar hidden inside of this kind of body shape. And that was bringing together the continent of India and arguably Pakistan as well, to agree. But it was more of a Hindu concept coming together with the Middle American concept of what was similar between them, because Plato called it the Great Year. It's this 26,000 year elliptical cycle that the Earth is on. And you have the Vedic texts that present this same idea, and then you have the Mayan and Aztec texts that also talk about this 26,000 year. So this one artwork was putting together something that was in common with the Indian continent. It had something to do with European, and it had something to do with the American continent. So in just this one picture. So and that's one of the six. I tried to find in many of these expressions different kinds of things that would be also in honor of Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro is one of their sacred sites that had some symbols, and this statue that in particular had something to do with Vina, and then the Great Flood myth that you would have in Abrahamic traditions, and maybe this exploring this idea that 12,800 years ago or so we might have had this catastrophic flood that in the Bible is the Noah's Ark story, but you'll find a similar story in Japan as well. So all of these things were massively interesting, and this is what I tried to bring as much to the surface as possible. But then some media reported it as me painting landscapes on her body, of course, which was hilarious.
Some pornographic nudes directly. Is that the artwork that I'm displaying?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit on the dark side there for some reason, but
yeah. It's interesting. When you,
but luckily, because we put that much effort into it, and we put it out into the world with love, then that's how it was received. Even in Pakistan, despite her kind of controversies and her being quite known for also fanning some of those flames, it was very positively received, which I was very happy about.
Yeah, can you share some of the recent projects or accomplishments you're actually particularly proud of, or maybe upcoming? You mentioned some you're working already on. I'm not sure if this is to be public yet, or any previous work.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about, for example, because we got funded. It took me 10 years to find the next superstar, I guess, and who to work with. Depending on your perspective, she's a superstar of a different kind, which is Brittany Kaiser. So she's the star of the Great Hack documentary on Netflix, which has about 1 billion views or something crazy like that. And she's known for being the whistleblower of Cambridge Analytica and the sort of Facebook algorithm manipulation that this one little think tank was doing, and then kind of revealing in conjunction with all the rest of the manipulations that were going on. And her kind of being in Congress and then becoming a data activist of helping people understand what data ownership is all about in the Web3 world or whatever. I mean, she's one of the most important voices in our industry to kind of help people get educated and fighting for digital ownership rights. And I was very, very inspired by her story and got connected through a friend to her. And we then started this process under COVID times, which was very difficult because we couldn't find a place where we could be in the same time to shoot this thing. We were considering Texas, we were considering Finland, we were considering Dubai, and nothing seemed to be working out. And finally, when we were ready to do the shoot, then also she had given birth to her kid just a while before, and then I was about to also have my firstborn with us. But 2 weeks before we started shooting, unfortunately, my wife and I, we lost our son in childbirth. So it was under extraordinary circumstances that we still pulled it off, that she came to Finland back then with her whole entourage and family, and we still managed to record all the different things with virtual reality and depth cameras and all whatever what we used in order to tell her story. And then we just ran out of money. We didn't have any. We couldn't put the post production side together, and that became a next kind of big challenge. But now, through the Crypto Oasis guys, I went to the Swiss Web3 Fest, and we got connected to Karim from Mercatura Forum from Egypt. And he then said that we're going to take care of this, and they're going to help us with the AI models and shooting new things and putting the post production together. So that's one thing that is now coming to fruition. It's been quite a challenging project. This one, the longest of my life actually ever, and that's that. There are many others that we are working with in the background, but I prefer not to talk about those too much yet.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I know there's a lot of personal stuff and emotions. I remember. Anyway, so really, you've been working on digital sneakers, metaverse digital gallery. You have your own digital gallery, I think, not just one, multiple. Sherlock Holmes, and much, much more. What's next in that grandiose creation of and conquering the digital world? Well, what do you think is coming up?
Well, I think to bring back to something that you were saying a little bit earlier about NFTs and this whole thing is the perception of value. Like right now, if I say to many people in the art world or even in the Web3 world, I say the word NFT and they will snicker at it and say, well, it's NFTs. So it's not, for the most part, it hasn't been since the beginning of the hype. It hasn't been beneficial to say it. It's not been, I haven't really monetarily benefited as fantastically as many people have in the NFT space from that. I've done okay, sure, and it's been much better than it was before. But for the grand majority, mentioning the NFT hasn't been and still isn't a positive thing to kind of mention. People are trying to wrangle themselves out to say, oh, it's the digital certificate or it's digital this or whatever the different digital asset, these kinds of things, because they're trying to get away from the bad reputation of NFTs. And I don't really care what it's going to be ultimately called. I'm just keeping my goal on the actual thing, which is that through decentralized blockchains, it's a decentralized one if it's a real blockchain, in my opinion. If you do it with this protocol properly, then you will have a new kind of value structure in the world that is necessary for us, and so that we get to use it and go boldly into the future. So I don't mind it. I didn't mind it then when people were snickering at NFTs, and I don't mind it now. There's some people who don't really like me inside of the NFT space because I've critiqued some of the things that I thought were the dumbest things on earth, like the whatever Ethrox or something like that. Were the thing that kind of then ruined the name of NFTs for so many people. Indeed. But for those who understand what's really going on and they have the vision of where we're going, digital ownership is here, and those who dig a little bit deeper and try to find the real value projects, they will then be rewarded because they were able to withstand some of that snickering or the whatever different protection things that people have because they don't quite understand it, so they'd rather shut down and not have to deal with it. I totally get it. It's obviously such a passion of mine and so integrally tied to everything that we're doing that I can't get away from it even if I wanted to at this point in time. So but maybe that's useful for some people, is that if there is anything that calls you from that world, it's going to have some landmines, it's going to be tricky and all that kind of thing, but just because there's some peer pressure or some people have misbehaved, let's say, like this with NFTs, hopefully that's not going to discourage some important people from coming into the space and keep building the future. I think
no, definitely. That's what we hope, all of us. And because the minute you talk blockchain, similarly, it's cryptocurrency. So when I teach or I lecture about blockchain, the first thing I have to mention, I'm not talking about cryptocurrencies. And then let's have the discussion. So it falls in the same thing because you have to set expectation. And then you finish one of those sessions, and the first question is, what's the best thing to trade? Well, that's one application out of the gazillion types of other things that I'd like to show you. So it's really important to try to differentiate, and then always try to create those use cases, because we need more and more, I think, use cases. I still
So
have two more questions for you, and then due to the time factor,
sure.
for emerging digital artists interested in starting or incorporating this blockchain technology into their work, what do you advise them? What do you offer, or not offer them? What do you advise them that will offer really that experience for them to succeed?
I think I'll say this even more generally. I'll say this in a way that if you're an artist, if you're maybe an emerging collector, if you're almost anyone in the world, I think the one way in how to make this world better is that you will have some sort of intuition, you will have some sort of resonance with certain ideas much more than other ones. Some ideas are going to excite you, and kind of like when you talk about it or even dare to think about it, your eyes will light up and you'll go like, damn, if that could be possible. And the more we follow that intuition that is different for pretty much all of us, we're wired differently, and we have different purposes, and there are different things that excite us. But I'm in my own life, what has always worked for me time and time again, even though it has been terribly difficult at times and whatever, it's to follow that whatever inspiration and excitement that kind of gives a new perspective to something. And even though it's going to be scary to follow it, there's going to be some method on how to do it so that you get to be a better version of yourself every single time that you do have the courage to follow that inner voice or that intuition. And it's sometimes difficult in a very busy life to hear it, because it usually whispers rather than shouts. We live in such a noisy world right now, but I think most people have that capacity, if not all people have that capacity, to even just incrementally do one thing that takes you further into the world of what excites you and what you find interesting, rather than the safe thing. I'm not saying, okay, here's a crazy idea, I'll leave my job that pays my bills right now, the day that you get the idea. That's not it. You can be sensible about it, but the more you can follow that true, authentic excitement or inspiration, the better off all of us will be, because it's an extraordinary time, and we do have to remember why we live to begin with. I mean, there's so many different things that people are now doing with AI that they can do, and they're not really asking if they should do. I'll give you an example, and even if this might be the thing that excites you, but I'll give you an idea of what I find strange about it, which is that, let's say there are these dating pictures that are now emerging, or business pictures that you get to make of yourself. You just give AI a picture, it'll put you in a suit in a cool setting and all of this kind of stuff, or it'll make you look amazing for your dating site or something like that. And what you don't then do is actually go through the process of, let's say for the dating example, you don't dress better, you don't make yourself in good shape, you don't live in as exciting of an environment, what the picture that was made by AI is going to actually do for you. So your reality and the perception of what is your reality are splitting like this, and you didn't go on the hero's journey to actually make yourself better. So you remain the same, but you can have an amazing representation of yourself that then gives other people a false expectation of what they're going to meet if they ever meet you in real life. And that robs you of your personal growth. It robs you from doing the journey that actually makes life worth living to a degree. Maybe it helps in some sense, maybe I don't get it, but at least that's been something that has been massively beneficial in my own life, is that I was deathly afraid of being a public speaker. when I first started 10 years ago, a little bit over, just recording my own things with a camera in a room, I had to take multiple takes, and like my voice was trembling, and I was really, really afraid. And then, like in this picture, all of a sudden, it's a full-blown arena where I get to talk, or I get to hang out with you now, knowing this is recorded and being very naturally myself. So I did the journey and acquired the skill set, and it wasn't helped by AI. And I can't tell you how much that has benefited my life, that I did the brave thing as opposed to hid behind some thing. And that's maybe something that a little bit is frightening about how people are making art, how they're making their social relations, and all things that you have the technical capacity now to get assisted by, but what does it rob you of? So maybe that's one perspective to the whole thing. So in short, follow your inspiration, because it does. Maybe your passion is to make the next AI dating app or whatever, and it'll make people's lives better in ways that I don't even understand. Who knows? It's just a perspective that I have. I'm an old geezer, like I said, 45.
Indeed. My last question, it's a good take, by the way. My last question is, any predictions do you think in this marketplace or in this space? And you have 2 minutes for that before I close this whole session.
Sure. I think it'll follow the bull run rules. What is it then? Like 2 months is the Bitcoin halving again?
Yeah, exactly.
So I wouldn't. I've been around a couple of cycles, and I wouldn't presume this is any different of a cycle. I mean, it always fluctuates a little bit, and we're in a crazy situation with the world right now. Depends on if this very unfortunate perspective, which is that we're already in the Third World War, depends on how that goes. But in terms of Bitcoin, they'll keep printing more dollars, and you still can't make more Bitcoin. So that's the perspective that maybe you want to go and listen to some Andreas Antonopoulos on the fundamentals of why why Bitcoin or cryptocurrency came along in the first place, and then that'll give you a much better perspective than I ever could.
Yeah, indeed. I'll send you a small movie on Instagram, a small reel about World War III. It's kind of a nice joke. I'll send it to you in a few. Uh, yeah, it's a big question. Are we in World War III or not? Well, it seems we are, but we're not claiming it. So anyway, thank you, Vesa. Really, it was an amazing, but I'd like to keep the time so that it doesn't spill over. Much appreciated for you jumping on this. Thank you for creating what you create. And most importantly, because I lived it maybe in a similar way on one part, but I quit and left everything because I couldn't maintain my not passion, but at least I wasn't seeing anything out of it, because it's tough for artists, especially in the digital space. It's tough for them to be supported, to get financed, to be in. I remember going to the Center of Photography in New York, and then seeing art piece of someone crushing cucumber, and I said, like, my art is like way much better than this. And then he's exhibiting, and then I was not given the chance by any big name and so many other things. So this is where I said I'll rather keep doing my books, my own stuff for my own art. And this is where I locked a chapter of 7 years into the art photography space. It was an interesting time. I still love to do it, but not as far as making it as a primary thing. Maybe with the rise of digital art, I would have also reignited, but I
Please
quit it.
do, because there were really cool images. So, I mean, don't quit your day job or the
No,
thing that
no.
you're doing just yet, but go further into that, because it's going to make the world better and you better.
Yeah.
Definitely do it, man.
Cheers, man. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Enjoy the. Right now, you're in the cold season, and the not just cold, it's freezing season. So see you back in Dubai whenever soon.
Rudy, thank you very much for having me. Oh, and go buy my art. It's artforcrypto.com and
Yes,
artevo.org.
yes. I will put it in the description also. So once it's released, it will be there. Cheers.
Thank you, buddy.